Greetings, Warlords. Rodge here. Welcome to Saga Thursday, the show all about the skirmish miniatures game from Studio Tomahawk. Today we are joined once again by James. James, how's it going?
Hey, Rodge. I'm doing well. How are you?
Awesome. So you are back on for kind of a round two here. So back last year, kind of in October, we did a marathon video stretching over 2 hours, the Saga Thursday record. And that one was called Saga for Lord of the Rings, A Song of Ice and Fire, Samurai, and Bronze Age. So we just kind of explored the idea of using the Saga rules and mechanics for ages and, like other game systems and settings that aren't touched yet. Probably some of these will never be touched. And that was a really interesting discussion. But we actually had to, even though it was the longest, we had to kind of cut it short. And so this is kind of round two here. So we're going to talk about using Saga for kind of the New World, Conquistador, Columbian era stuff. And then we'll get into kind of Black Powder Saga, and then Star Wars and 40K, which I'm really not sure where we're going there, but we'll kind of explore that together.
Yep.
Now, this is a monthly video, so the first video of every month. There's a few kind of news and other tidbit items I'd like to address. So before we jump into that, I'm going to do that stuff. So there is a little bit of official Saga news. James, did you see there was just recently another FAQ update for just the Ordenstadt and the Mongols for Crusades? Did you see that?
I did see that, and as a Mongol player, I immediately grabbed my previous fact to see how it changed. It didn't seem like it was that massive of a change to the Mongols, but I get what they were going for.
Yeah, so just off the top of my head, I did look at it. What I believe changed was there's a multi-activation, and so people have found, I think the intent with Studio Tomahawk is people would move up, shoot, and then move away, kind of in classic composite bow style. But what players are doing is moving up, shooting, moving a second time, staying next to the enemy and shooting
again,
and then just staying there, possibly moving a third time and shooting a third time, and just staying next to the enemy and then kind of daring them to come at me, bro. They still have a lot of attacks. The enemy's depleted. So I believe the change is like you have to move away from the enemy to get the fatigue free, or like the ability requires you move away or something like that. So
have to end your movement outside of M, maybe L. Further away from the enemy.
So that's reinforcing kind of the play style, and I think what most people envision of a composite bow board. So I think people,
when I was looking through it and thinking about the last couple of times I played Mongols, there wasn't anything about it that jumped out to me that would necessitate a change in my personal play style. So
sure. So I think there's an opportunity there to kind of push the limits, and they kind of tweaked a little bit. The other one was the Ordenstadt. So the resurrection ability is a melee ability that's triggered by the heroes and Hearthguards. So mechanically it works the same, but you have to engage with your heroes and Hearthguards instead of having them safely tucked away in the back. Because I think the ability required heroes or Hearthguards, or maybe Hearthguards. But you could just have meat waves of warriors and levy, and then as long as there's one Hearthguard in the back providing support, you could resurrect them. So I like that, kind of turning it on its head. The other part was the Knock Osten, the free kind of army-wide movement ability is triggered in the orders phase now, which is kind of interesting.
That is interesting.
Because basically that cuts out, kind of probably another unintended thing, which is a double shot with crossbow warriors. Was a popular thing to do. So it kind of cuts out these plays that probably aren't envisioned by the creators of, when they were designing the board, that, Ordnance shots are going to shoot twice with their crossbows. And that's going to be their thing that everybody latches on to versus, just kind of being aggressive. So Cool stuff. What do you think about a fac that is just a couple factions versus like everything? Do you support that kind of thing? What would be your preference?
Yeah, I mean, I know some players express a little frustration that I have to print off another piece of paper, and I have to,
I know that's me. Like, I just updated these because I thought we were done for a while. Yeah.
So some people, actually paste them to their boards or photocopy it or whatever. So there, there's a little bit of work there because it's a fact to a battle board. I guess I like facts that change maybe rules in the book. Like when javelins got changed, that was kind of like, okay, that's a pretty easy thing to remember, and I don't have to change every battle board that has javelin guys on it.
Yeah.
So me personally, I think I like that kind of fact a little bit more than facts that change battle boards. But I will say this is something I noticed when the Hannibal reprint came out. I wasn't aware they were going to do this, but the Hannibal reprint actually has a little thing on it that says 2025. And they updated the book and the battle boards. So they are, as they do reprints, they are updating things. That doesn't help players who have already bought the thing.
Correct.
Right? But it's nice for, moving forward.
I have seen
I think
that.
Facts are good for the game because it prevents a negative play experience. You have these situations where someone has found, a loophole, a problem, whatever it is, they've exploited it because, we're war gamers and that's what we do. And I think it's good. I think it's good for the health of the game that the company responds to that and, provides a fix. So I'm generally in favor of that, although I definitely sympathize with people who've bought a product and then find that they have to update it.
Yeah, definitely. So totally hear that. It's kind of interesting here. We'll see where it goes. Kind of sets a precedent, well, if they do it to these faction, why can't they specify, the one faction that I play that I think needs something fixed. So potentially for option is out there for more grumbling and lack of targeted fixes. But I think it's cool. I think these ones do kind of address kind of loopholes from the designer's perspective, unintended play with the not running away with the shooting, and then for the Mongols, and then the double shot with the crossbows, I think specifically were unintended kind of consequences of the battle board abilities, and they wanted them addressed. So that's my guess. I didn't actually, sometimes I get heads up on these, and sometimes I don't. I did not get a heads up. I was kind of with there of everybody else in the trenches, kind of looking at it for the first time. So very cool. Check it out. And let's move on. Friend of the show for March is Marcos at Reconquer Designs. And
love those.
Working on lovely stuff as always.
So good.
He's
His
actually
stuff is amazing.
doing this month is Grenadines and I think the 14th century. So kind of expanding, the Muslim line forward in time, and these ones look great and would be perfect for, Fimbulwinter we actually allowed, it was a chivalry event, but we allowed the Emirate of Granada to be played using the Moors board, and then I think the Hearthguard were just not equipped with Joust. They were just kind of straight mounted Hearthguard. So that's one way to do it. These would also be great just for using the Castilian battle board and chivalry, just straight up, I think, as a full kind of proxy force. And then the kind of third thing I've seen is using the Muslim factions as free companies. So
absolutely.
Kind of like, mercs, whatever. I think that's another good option there. So cool stuff there. Have you seen his fantasy stuff? He's doing some Lord of the Rings inspired things.
Yeah, the picture you sent to me of the Witch King, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to get that. That's awesome. Kind of reminds me of the Franzetta art a little bit with the way he's got his arms up and all that, and the floating crown. That's awesome.
Yeah, kind of going back, Lord of the Rings has been around a long time, so for some people the movie look is what's cemented in their mind, but there's like 40 or 50 years of artwork and imagery and different takes on it, And so for many of the takes, they are pretty historical looking figures. So I think Marcos is kind of playing that up. So we just, at our house, we just finished Return of the King. We had the Lord of the Rings over the last probably 2 weeks here. And
that's awesome.
The boy was into it. I was pleased. At one point, he requested that we put Return of the King on. And there's still hope for him yet, James.
Going down the right path.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
So that kind of hit close to home. Check those out. He has a jousting set. James, have you been up on the Night of the Seven Kingdoms?
Oh man, I am all about the Seven Kingdoms right now. We had a big Seven Kingdoms party on Sunday, and we got my friend did this kind of Anglo-Saxon stew, and
nice.
and we had a big thing of sourdough bread, and it was fantastic. I love that show. I can't wait for more of it. I hope that I know at one point Simon was going to do some stuff for Duncan Egg and I think also House of the Dragon. I think that got pushed back to 2027. Sure. I hope that materializes because I know Simon is.
I could definitely see that. Yeah, I've heard that, but obligatory skirmish game with 5 to 10 ice and fire miniatures, not quite compatible with the ice and fire made game perhaps. But yeah, so Reconquer, they've got the jousting stands and everything, and I'm like, God damn it! Am I gonna have to print this out and paint it out?
Well, and there's a lot of good jousting rule sets out there too. I know there was one in White Dwarf at one point. There's a Hobbit jousting thing that Osprey has. So lots of good things you can find to do to simulate jousting.
Yeah, I might have to look at that. I never actually thought of that. So to check that out. He's got 2 wrestling knights basically locked in combat.
Yeah. Super cool.
And again, kind of bringing it back to a Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Probably just coincidence, but very, very cool. Definitely can do some cool scenes with that. He is going to be giving away the Pedro the fourth IV of Aragon mounted on foot. So if you are a lifeguard or warlord on the Saga Thursday Patreon, you're going to get this Pedro the Fourth of Aragorn with his badass helmet there for free. So that is for anybody in the March Patreon lifeguard and above. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and sign up. You can get it. So pretty cool. Thank you, Marcos. And
I can definitely attest to the quality of Reconquer. I have several of his. I think it was some of the Bretonian stuff he did. Looks just like the art on the old books, and boy, they came out really sharp when I had them printed, and so I'm a big fan of Reconquer.
Absolutely, yeah. I there was a sale, winter sale, probably 5 or 6 weeks ago now, but I just picked up basically the rest of the Berbers and all the Muslim stuff. So I do have a Mutatawiyya force that I built, literally 6 points of Mutatawiyya, and now I'm gonna expand it out into kind of like a Berber force. I've been printing out. Maybe time I'm doing anything, I've got a little extra room on the plate there, I'll throw some crossbowmen or something on. So I'm definitely going to be adding to those guys, hopefully this year. For Rodge Originals, so anybody at the Hearthguard level and up on the Patreon will get some STL goodies from me. And one of the files for February was the Chivalry Pavises. So this is the actually Chivalry dice symbols. So pictured here, we just have the towers, but I do, they're printed out. I just don't have a picture of the crown and the lion as well. So the Pavises that are standing, freestanding with a little pivot pole or what have you, and then another version that you could glue on to a figure. So these ones in the picture are the freestanding ones, and they're literally just I'm a genius or Mr. Magoo here, because I printed them out, and they just happened to basically slide and like kind of pinch underneath the crossbow lads here. So basically, like, they're not glued in on these ones, and like 11 of the 12 are wedged in solid, and then there was like one pose where it would kind of stick in there, but then when I would move him around, he would fall out. So yeah, so these crossbowmen, I can pull off those pavises, and they're just regular crossbows, or tuck them back in. Now in Chivalry, most of the pavis guys are the kind of your melee troops, so I haven't tried to mock it up with them. What I might do with these pavises is kind of like maybe kind of like the English stakes, just like just a line of pavises that I just put down in front of the unit and say, sure, these are the guys with the shields, the pavises, in this game. And, this little line of shields doesn't count as anything for movement. That's just there. So, and I know that I get light cover. So, yeah, the folks will get that, and they get a kind of a remix of the Fimbulwinter Doctor. I kind of did a couple different heads on there, and they'll be getting that as well. Cool. So thank you to everybody on the Patreon, and the lifeguards will be getting those goodies shortly. Now, finally, we can move on to our main topic here. So first up, so we're going to hit a couple different themes as indicated up front. The first one here, we're going to stick to our saga roots a little bit, and then we'll get more and more out there as we go, I think. But we talked about it last time. I kind of wanted to circle back around to it, and that is kind of, the Spanish invasion of the New World. But
sure,
obviously, the Portuguese were at it too. Down in Brazil and kind of the East Indies or over in Indonesia and stuff like that. So, but this will focus kind of on the history book highlights for us here in the United States, which is, the invasion of Mexico and Peru and that kind of thing. So I've been thinking about this. So this is just kind of my take on it, kind of to show you my thought process and to give you some ideas. So for the Conquistadors, James, I'm thinking for the Spanish, they're all Hearthguard. They have to be Hearthguard there to represent their limited numbers and their high armor. Now, it's interesting. They're all Hearthguard are good fighters, but that wasn't necessarily the case back then. They're kind of just a carpenter going along, and all of a sudden you're with 300 guys invading the capital of a city you've never seen before. But for this, we're going to count them as Hearthguard only. And then for the shooters, then what do we do with your crossbows and handguns? So I would use the combined formation Persian rules,
nice,
which have Hearthguard that have high armor, but still shoot. So we're maintaining the idea that we have like, superior armor on the Spanish figures here. And so the idea would be, you don't have a lot of crossbows or firearms. So like these units would just be half fighters, half, 2, 3 or 4 melee guys and 2 or 3 handgunners or something like that would make a handgunner unit, for example. You could take for the firearms, you could use the magic firearm rules if you want, or you could use the handgun rules from Chivalry, whatever your group prefers there. You could throw in the cannon, of course, use the cannon rules from Chivalry. I think that one is good. And then for the native allies, so, we like to think Spanish were doing this on their own, but, had 10,000 fellow allied city-state warriors, trying to use the Spanish to overthrow their enemies. So you could have a Spanish as a Hearthguard, and then warriors, you could take 1 or 2 or 3 units maybe of warriors would be kind of the allies, basically American Indian allies that are fighting with the Spanish, and that's kind of how you would do it. So for battle board, if the majority of the force is going to be Hearthguard, it's got to be a pretty good battle board or battle board that supports Hearthguard. So obviously the French comes down as one idea, but ultimately I settled on the successor battle board using this. Cool. And so anything that says phalanx on the board would apply to the Spanish only. Okay. So most of the abilities would be Spanish only. And then I think it provides good Hearthguard support. And then your warriors, there's a few abilities that they get benefit from. And then with the 3, they choose Hubris, Divite, and then I can't remember the Legatum, maybe the third one. That represents your conquistador. Is he fighting for God, country, or personal glory? So if you had a little campaign with your buddies, you could have multiple Spanish players, and your rules would be slightly different between them. So what do you just off the top of your head? What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting era. You got some really good model choices. I think Wargames Atlantic has made a Conquistadors.
Yeah,
set.
Straight up. Yeah,
I think they have also made. I can't remember if it's Aztec. That sounds right. And then
think so.
Warlord made 4 factions. I think it was Aztec, Inca, Maya, and these were all pretty cool metal models that had a little bit of a mythological flair to it as well. So I think in addition to kind of what you've cooked up here, you could also grab one of these armies and maybe slot them in as an Age of Magic army. Because you could say, well, if we're doing that mythological edge, and they have some of their mythological creatures with them, maybe it's a creature, a behemoth, or whatever. You could do some of that. So yeah, lots of cool opportunities for modeling, for gameplay, and kind of a little bit of an underutilized era. Another thing that I'm reminded of is the Skraelings board that you can get.
Yeah, so I'll get into that aspect here.
Yeah, cool.
So for the native side, then
yes.
I kind of split it into kind of 2 different groups. So one, we kind of have the Aztec, the Maya, the Inca, kind of the more organized. Some of them are empires. They're city states. So I'm kind of I like how the Skraeling board did it, where it doesn't have Hearthguard.
Sure. Yes.
And then it'll just have warriors and levy. So there's be warriors, no special equipment. Levy with javelins or bow. If you're slings, whatever. If you wanted to use that. So I'm going to kind of follow that method. I think that's a good way to make a distinction between, so these warbands will always outnumber the Spanish ones. And then 2, if we're kind of playing up the myth and stuff like that, there's no Hearthguard, so the warlords are kind of vulnerable. These guys are always kidnapping, capturing the leaders and stuff like that, targeting them. So I think it kind of plays up to the myth of that kind of thing. For these ones, I'm liking all the invasion barbarian boards. You could use Franks, Goths, Saxons. They're all kind of straightforward. Kind of, again, I haven't done much research here, but just kind of fitting my conceptions would be kind of more straightforward, kind of waves and trying to wear them down. I think the Viking board could be pretty good too, and the Mutts, because of the kind of the trade-off. They're going to have lower armor or like killing their own guys to achieve additional damage. So I think that kind of fits in maybe with what you would imagine their play style would be. Another one would be the Gauls, I think, that kind of aggressive board. And then the kind of the wild card here, I think, would be Anglo-Saxons. But thinking we're using warriors, and then the levy aren't the no special equipment levy, but it's like the javelin or the bow levy. So if you're thinking of playing that board mostly with warriors, it is kind of a straightforward, can be fast, kind of an aggressive board. So that's kind of my wild card pick for those societies. And then the other ones would be kind of the dispersed farmer villages, the or hunter gatherers, if we're kind of really going along the periphery here, but the Taíno, the Muisca, kind of the Amazonians, and most of the North Americans, we wanted to represent them. Then we kind of go towards, what are those more skirmishy war bands, kind of maybe shooting reliant, not standing face to face like maybe these other cultures did. You think of the Picts, the Welsh, the Iberians, pagan peoples, I think are all great choices. I think a couple of wild cards for that one are the pagan Rus. But instead of all the cold winter effects, they're all like jungle heat effects. So it's like the biting heat,
Right.
the mists, jungle mists for the instead of the blizzard or whatever. So kind of retheming those abilities based off heat and jungle. Because the pagan Rus could be kind of a good avoidance board, and then there's also some trade-off things. The white wolves, you lower your armor. Other abilities lower your armor, and so that's kind of in theme. And then the last wild card, I think, could be the Hun board. Just played as there's no cavalry at all. Sure, if you look at those abilities, none of them are say mounted only. That was intended, but it becomes a really interesting board there if you're considering all foot guys, and there's a lot of movement and kind of fatigue shenanigans that could be really interesting if you're rocking some jungle or plains dwelling fellows. So that was kind of my idea there. Just kind of split them between those kind of two archetypes and go from there. Any other ideas or anything you might add to that, James?
That's another one where there's not a ton of models out there, but there are some things. So you mentioned the Taíno. There's a company, I think it's Mythicos, and they do. They were the ones who originally did the metal models with Warlord, and then I think they spun into their own company. But they do 3D printed Taínos, and they also have. I think they have Inuit. That would be a cool fit for the pagan Rus as well. And then you could also, I think they have some plains natives as well. So there's some really cool modeling opportunities there. And in terms of the boards themselves, totally agree with your choices. The first thing that popped into my mind were like the an all foot Welsh board, because they're very terrain focused. They're very jump up, throw the javelins, jump back into the terrain kind of feeling to them. So that, to me, that would fit a lot with what you would imagine native tactics would be like, especially for folks that weren't as organized into a military, as some of the societies were more militaristic, and then you've got other options for that.
Yeah. So a lot of options there, I think, for the native side. And then obviously, this is just considering the kind of point of contact, what was around there. But I mean, you could rewind it back to like Olmec. Time is elastic in the Saga universe in some respects. Say like the Tiwanaku, or kind of the pre-Incan cultures down there in South America. You could get into that, or actually kind of move it forward, because it wasn't a sealed deal immediately, but there was always uprisings, and it took a long time. There's kind of like maroon states, when they bring the Africans over. Turns out bringing like an entire organized tribe of warriors over to be your slaves, convenient, but definitely they escape, and all of a sudden they're highly capable fighters out there in rugged terrain that doesn't turn so good. So there's definitely opportunity. They would get horses pretty much almost immediately. So you could, if you want to play kind of a post-conquest thing, like maybe 40, 50 years down the road, you could play those same war bands with horses. They've acquired some firearms, stuff like that. So there's really quite a lot of opportunity there, I think, for gaming groups to kind of go at it. But so those are kind of my thoughts. Hopefully you could kind of do the same thing for most any historical. I mean, because you could like go as deep, James, as deep as you want. So like if you think of like Iberia, at any point, in the Reconquista, there's, multiple Christian factions and Muslim factions. North Africa is involved. So you could even kind of do like a micro kind of campaign with your group. This is kind of just off the top of my head where, sure. Every one of the kingdom, you're not obviously all using a Castilian board for everything. You're using different boards and kind of, you're just applying that kind of the same thought process here. And you're just kind of playing around with it as long as, you guys aren't taking anything too serious. I can't imagine you'll run into any issues, but just kind of wanted to give people some ideas on that. But so we're going to stick with historicals for a little bit longer here, and you're going to move us into the black powder age. Probably straight up Napoleonics here. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. So with black powder, we're talking Napoleonics, American Civil War. Mm-hmm. Basically at any point in time where they kind of stopped wearing armor, they're shooting each other, but the effective range isn't the longest in the world, right? And the right
the whites of the eyes, James.
Yes,
don't shoot.
That's right. That's right. Hold the line. Yeah. So of course, the first thing that comes to mind is our wonderful new chivalry book and the English faction, and we're talking about the English because of the emphasis on shooting here.
Shooting, yeah.
So we are loose, of course, was the first thing that jumped out at me, which has, of course, received a little bit of a FAQ.
I forgot to mention completely that the English also received a FAQ update, and I can't remember this. Might have been after actually the Ordnance Mongols, but
fairly recent as well. Yeah, but because of the shooting emphasis on the English board, I think it works really well for really any of those factions. As we get into black powder, the tactics sort of start to homogenize a little bit, right? Where we're behaving pretty similar on both sides of the battlefield.
Sure.
So using the same board to represent combatants on both sides, I think could also simplify things if you were trying to you get a new player into Saga, they've got a bunch of Napoleonics, and you say, hey, let me show you this. We're doing the same board, so we have access to the same abilities, the same the same equipment. We're only talking about warriors with the English. They don't get any levies, but they've got the bow option, they've got the melee option, they've got the horse option. So I think from an equipment perspective, the English are in a good place to represent black powder. And from a battle board, we've got loose, we've got hail of arrows, so we've definitely got some good.
You can do some
here. Rain of
long
arrows.
range shooting, like as you imagine. There should be, in games like that, you should be able to shoot farther, and so that's represented. But then you got, you're more effective. At the closer ranges there, whether you're using, again, the chivalry firearm rules or the magic firearms rule, or you could just kind of stick with the rules for bows, and just just proxying, the kind of effect that way. So, cool. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, maybe not you're. I like that idea, the kind of the homogenized warfare, we're kind of adopting similar tactics there. So it's going to be kind of different in scope.
Cannon as the option too.
Got that cannon.
That's a good thing. We can do another thing we can do with this is we can think of different scales, because there's especially for Napoleonics, there are all kinds of scales. So if you're thinking, well, we're doing smaller models, they're often based on sort of rectangles, right? Mm-hmm. You might have two rows of guys based on if they're 10 millimeter models, based on rows and rectangles. So if you have some stuff like that, what you could do, obviously you can't take individual models off. Just put another die next to it to represent their remaining wounds, or how many wounds have been whatever your preferences. And you can, so there are ways that you can use models that are not standard Saga models. But if you're just playing with your club and you've all agreed sort of on what you're doing, I don't even think you have to be limited by scale. I think you can think outside the box on that one too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely seen folks using like 15 mil figures for Saga. And you could easily could track it with the dice, or if you are kind of in the little multi stands or whatever, if you can, if the kind of numbers line up to 8 stands for a unit, if the math kind of holds, you can just peel off a stand as a casualty. So yeah, it's kind of cool idea. Definitely would make for a fun kind of big game thing with the Saga dice. We're using the same board, but kind of just the chaos of battle means we can't do the same thing as each other all the time. And maybe even pull in
the like some of the epic Saga stuff where you're using, what is it, like 16 dice, 12 dice, something like that. I haven't messed around with that too much, but I always thought that would be cool for a really big battle.
Yeah. So that one, you would have 3 different war bands, and then there's kind of an epic, almost like an epic battle board. And but the purpose of that battle board is to make a lot of deaths happen quicker than normal, like moving armies together and causing lots of chaos and destruction. So it actually, I do recommend taking a look at those for big battle. If you think big battles are kind of slow, drawn out affairs, if you add those epic rules, you can get into fights a lot quicker, and it's more kind of decisive way of playing those big battles. So definitely recommend that. So cool. Well, yeah, I think that's a good take on using some black powder. Now anything else you want to add there before we
the only other thing when you were talking about the conquistadors and the natives, made me think a little bit of the French and Indian War. Which would be a really cool era to explore. You could use the Skraelings board. You could use the Great Kingdoms board from Magic. I always, whenever I can't figure out what I want to do with a faction that isn't represented in standard Saga, like the Great Kingdoms board is my go-to.
Magic, go back to because which one of these is good.
But yeah, you could. I think you could definitely do some colonial era stuff too. I think the English are a pretty good fit because we got the emphasis on shooting, but there is still some melee ability there. But yeah, I think you could do French and Indian War. I think you could do the Revolutionary War. There's maybe even like the War of 1812. We're bleeding into the Napoleonics in that era. But lots of cool. Lots of cool modeling opportunities. These are really neat figures. This is something, and of course with this year being the big anniversary in the U.S., a lot of companies are making more Revolutionary War stuff. So I know
that's right.
So, Warlord has made some. Wargames Atlantic has made some. I'm sure Harry's are doing something or already have something. So there's plenty of good models for that colonial era. Just getting into black powder as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I like your thoughts here, and for the Conquistador, the New World stuff, I kind of like fleshed out like a whole kind of like campaign universe here. So this one's kind of more limited in scope, but I think this will be like a great way for if you know historical guys that have these miniatures and play this, you could kind of set up a game with them and play through, use their models, use what they like, and say, hey, this is kind of what Saga's all about. So it's kind of a way to kind of meet somebody where they're at. And I think that's going to apply to everything else we move on to today, as well as, we can use Saga to meet new players where they're at if we just kind of think about it a little bit differently. So that said,
100%.
We are looking at a picture of Darth Vader right now. Are these all your
Star Wars,
your personal fakes, James?
These are mine. Yeah.
Okay, so these look like Legion guys.
They are
to my
Legion.
eyes.
Yep. I kind of got into Legion pretty heavy when it came out, and then as it sort of evolved, it lost me a little bit. I typically play now a game called Fistful of Lead with my old Legion models, but very very interested in finding parallels in Saga as well. So I've spent some time combing through the battle boards and the equipment and warrior and levy choices for some of these, and I think I've come up with some good parallels. So the Empire, we've actually talked about them already today. I'm going to pick the Ordenstat for the Empire.
Nice, dude. Colors match already. Yeah,
the colors are there, and let's see
some overtones there. The Imperial,
absolutely.
If you want to draw those parallels, certainly.
And we have the killing your own guys in order to achieve your objectives. That's it's a very Darth Vader kind of thing to do. And also the idea of enlist, right? This could be conscription. This could be however they got more stormtroopers in Star Wars. I'm not sure they
never really address where those guys were coming from.
They have a lot of stormtroopers, and they just keep coming. So I think the enlist idea from Ordenstat works really well, as well as the Dark Cross's Pure Hearts ability. I think that ties in well. And then a thing that was important to me when I was trying to assign these different sci-fi armies to Saga armies is making sure that they had equipment and personnel that would accurately represent what we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. So for the Ordenstat, they can take both a Warlord and a Hearthguard with heavy weapon, which to me sounds a lot like a lightsaber. And then we've got crossbow warriors, which could maybe be your more effective Imperial units. Maybe that's like the Death Troopers or the some of the robot dudes or whatever. And then we've got our bow levies, which of course are our hapless stormtroopers. So I think
getting mowed down and armored 3, cannon fodder. Okay,
So I think the Ordenstat do a really good job of representing the Empire here, and I think would be in fact. I think the last time I played against the Ordenstat, we even talked about how like these guys feel like Imperial stormtroopers and Sith and all that. So I think it's a really really good parallel there.
I think it's cool. Yeah, they're not ghosting. They're kind of like relentless. They never stop. The whole army moves. Those abilities are great for just the super warlord. If you're going to run Darth, you can combine all those abilities and he'll whoop some butt. So
for
definitely,
sure.
That's a great choice. Very thematic.
All right. And then we are, of course, looking at the rebels, and for those,
plucky rebels here. What do you?
We got the Iberians for the rebels. So let me
hit and run.
Let me pull that. Yeah, we've talked about them a little bit already today. But just let's see, did I grab the wrong book here? I probably did. But pulling, looking at what the Iberians can do, the thing that jumped out to me the most was the guerrilla ability, and so the way that they can get those extra shots. Oh yeah, here's the Iberians. So they can get those guerrilla markers to get. There's lots of ways they can get them. They can then use them for additional shooting attacks, and that was again something that was important to me. Making sure that the troop choices that we have here gel with what the models that are available. So we don't have the heavy weapons, unfortunately, but we still do have the ability to do a strong warlord, just a normal standard dismounted warlord. He can be a mount too, so maybe that could be
speeder bikes, like bro.
Luke on a speeder bike, right?
They give him rides too. That
absolutely.
Leia was riding on the back. You got the remount or whatever.
Another thing that kind of screamed rebels to me was the ability where they can, the mounted guys can move, and then they can grab a unit of infantry to move with them. So immediately makes me think of like Endor with the speeder bikes, and then the Ewok jumping on the back of the speeder bike, and off they go.
Absolutely, dude.
So that kind of stuff stood out to me. And we have sling warriors available in the Iberians, which slings are treated just like bows. So that would be our standard rebel trooper who has the ability to shoot. We've got our levies with javelins. That's of course our Ewoks. And I think there's a lot of good parallels here. So the Iberians were my choice for the rebels, and I think would also be a good choice for other eras, like we were talking about, where you want to represent a native force versus a colonial force. The Iberians seem really thematically strong for that. So I think there's a lot of good uses for that board.
Yeah, good choice here. Obviously, you'll be able to use, you probably, I don't know if Legion, I'm assuming has them, but little tokens with like the rebel symbol. So you can load those up on that guerrilla ability there. So you get to use those. But yeah, I like that idea. It looks like a good matchup here versus the Orden shot. Are we in the realms of theory still? James, or has this been tried out?
We're planning on a Star Wars battle in the near future in my group, and we're going to try out some of these Saga combinations and see how they go. But yeah, at this point, going through these lists, these have all been kind of like, I've got these models. What Saga board would I play with them? And where's the thematic parallel?
Absolutely, yeah.
And does the do the equipment and the personnel options allow me to represent everything that I can get for this army? And there's always kind of like you were talking about with the Conquistadors, right? There are things that you can pull in from other books. So if you're like, well, I've got this big laser turret thing, all right, that's a cannon. I've got I've got something that is maybe some type of vehicle I want to represent somehow. Maybe
the Scout Walker.
Maybe that's
the elephant,
scourge,
bro.
Or the elephant. Perfect. The elephant's great. So I think there's a lot of things in the different Saga books where there's a parallel to some type of model that you might already have or that your friend might already have, and you just gotta use a little bit of imagination, and you can find some cool combinations.
Yeah, there. Rule of cool. I think
100%
precedent here. So yeah,
yes,
like you said, we kind of been coming at it thematically. From equipment perspective, the question is, Ordenstadt versus Iberians. We don't know.
I don't know.
Successors versus Franks. Could it? We're unsure about that part. So, in the game of Saga, kind of certain matchups. I would say that actually probably isn't that big of a deal, in general. Sure, there's matchups can be skewed, but for the most part, most war bands can take on other war bands. So, I don't think it's a big deal, but certainly there could be something goes awry here with our selections when you get the rubber hits the road. But I think, like we said, thematically, equipment wise, we're all lined up here for a good time.
And if it's something where your group is limited to one book, maybe you guys only have one particular age, I think you can use this same process to go into one age and say, all right, well, these guys are like those guys, and those guys are like those other guys, and you can come up with something that has already been balanced against each other. And actually, the one that I recommend the most for that is Magic, because you got those great kingdoms for whatever Imperial type guys you want to have, and then you've got something like the Lords of the Wild or the Masters.
Yeah, we've got the guerrilla factions are in there. We got the aggressive covered. We got some weird guys, some resurrecting guys. So, I'm trying to think of factions for Age of Heroes. Yeah, they really had most of the archetypes were pretty much covered.
They did.
In the first
you must have had your work cut out for you on that one.
Yeah, just kind of digging deeper on the next set of factions. But for the most part, they really covered quite a swath with that first book. So
definitely.
All right. Well, there's a few more Star Wars factions. We got the clone troopers. Now these look
We're going to the prequels.
Figures to me. Yeah,
they are. Yeah, I picked up the Shatterpoint figures mainly because I was interested in painting them more than actually playing that particular game. I've always been really impressed by those figures. They're they're 40 millimeter figures, and they're a little expensive, so they're not good for Saga. They're
40 mil bases too, generally.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work. But the figures themselves have been really fun to paint, and I'm a big fan generally of the sculpting work that they're doing. So for the let's see, we're doing the droids. Is that right?
I got the clones up.
Oh, you got the clones up. All right. So for the clones,
yeah.
I picked the Byzantines.
Okay.
And let me open this up.
Through it. Yeah.
So we've got the guys. We've got a good diversity of equipment options here. So
okay.
if you got some guys you want to say that are Jedi, that's your Hearthguard with heavy weapons, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to have something like clones had their own types of speeder bikes or whatever vehicles you want to use, that'd be your horse warriors on the composite bows. And then
you can even, I'll say, you've got some vehicle, like a transport or something, and you just say, well, that counts as the unit there. I've got the figures to the side, or we'll track it with a dice or something. So it's the horses with composite bows, or the little helicopter jet things that they seem to fly around in, for example, if those are represented on the table.
And then our levies with just standard equipment, no ranged weapons, that'd probably be like your Wookiee warriors. And then we've got the clones themselves would be either the crossbow or the bow levies, depending on how strong you want to make them. And then we've got some abilities in here that are that I think are pretty emblematic of a clone army that's kind of resilient. I think that the Byzantines have some good defensive abilities.
Oh yeah.
Looking through their battle board, one of the ones that jumped out to me was the being able to activate a unit of levies without ranged weapons to do a shooting attack. There's a lot of scenarios where you could justify that from a sci-fi perspective. So just going over the battle board for the Byzantines, I think there's a lot of things that seem kind of defensive and seem like a strong militaristic army, and so that's where the kind of the
like an organized military force.
Force.
So that's kind of what you kind of think of when you think of the later Byzantines. Maybe to some extent, maybe some people think something else, but I think that's in line there. So good for these guys. Those shows, they weren't dying wholesale. They were kind of holding the line. Yeah, they weren't
little more defensive, little better armed than some of their contemporaries. So I think it's kind of maybe a little bit where the Byzantine idea came from too. Plus, I think it's a little bit of an underutilized board. I don't see people playing them very often. So sometimes some of my picks are like, oh, this is just a board I don't see very often. Let's talk about it.
All right. Yeah. All right. So, all right. Looks like lost the droids in my picture set up here, but let's talk about the droids.
The battle droids look like. So for the battle droids we're doing Saracens. And the Saracen idea kind of came from a similar thought process to the Byzantines, and it was looking at what kind of equipment and personnel options can we take. So we've got lots of good options for vehicles with tons of horse options. Warlord needs to be on horse. That could be General Grievous on his wheel bike, right? We've got the guys with the horse and composite bow, so that could be like the battle droids on the those little floating platform things they ride around on,
like pogo sticks. Oh my, with that fly.
And then for just your standard old Roger battle droid, we've got the bow levy. So that kind of is where I was approaching it from with the Saracens. And then when I look at the battle board, I see that we've got some shooting activations where they want me to be close to who I'm shooting. And that makes me think of battle droids in the sense of they're not super good shots. And so if they're going to hit anything, they have to be close to it to shoot it. And so, just going through there, I see some things that help out mounted units. So that that gets our vehicles, whatever vehicles we want to use. That gets them some help. And then for the shooting abilities, they have to be a little bit closer. And to me, that represents that maybe they're not as good a shot as the clones were. So I would be really interested in trying out this matchup, especially since they're from the same book.
I think that'd be a good one. Yeah,
kind of see how they work against each other.
They tested thoroughly. So
yeah,
cool. That sounds fun to me. That sounds cool. Right. We got through Star Wars. Now people saw just a glimpse a second ago. We're looking at Space Marines. We're going there, James.
The classic.
We're doing it. It's no turning back now.
There's no denying that the Games Workshop makes fantastic miniatures. Are they a little bit expensive? Yeah, sure. But the trouble that I have with Games Workshop is that they do a new edition of the rules every 3 years on the dot, and it's you're buying a new book. You're buying new cards. I'm surprised they haven't found a way to make you buy new models too, but they're probably working on it.
Well, they're slowly, that's a little slower,
Yeah.
It takes it's a multi-edition
right. They changed the scale. So if you had old like 3rd and 4th edition, Space Marines, they're different from these new, I don't know, 7th, 8th, 9th edition Space Marines they're just bigger. So anyway, great models. Not a huge fan of the rules and the way the company operates with the rules.
Yeah.
Unlike Saga, where you buy one book, it's probably good for 10 years, and you get free online updates instead of having to buy new rule books typically. So lots of good things to say about Saga rules versus
and I'll just say
rules
before we get into it. I did a video before talking about price comparisons, and frequently, we reference 40K and stuff like that.
Sure.
And there was a comment on there. Somebody said, that's not a good comparison because those people would never come. 40K players would never play Saga or something like that, or there was too big a gap. But I'm going to say too, my local game group, we've got with the recent league, we're up to kind of 5, 6, 7-ish kind of reliable-ish guys. The core is me and 3 others, and 2 of those guys came directly from 40K to Saga. So that guy's comment, in my opinion, was not accurate in the slightest. So when we're thinking about our conversation here, the Saga player probably has no desire to play 40K. And people play a lot of games. Maybe you play both, but but if you think about trying to meet somebody where they're at, they've got this collection here. Oftentimes, these guys will moan to you about the additions and the change. They are like fatigued by the Games Workshop cycle. So there's an opportunity for them. Hey, you got these models. You want to? Well, let's break them out. Let's give it a try. And James is going to kind of go over kind of what he thinks may be kind of the best way or for doing that is. So even if you're not interested in 40K yourself, just give this a listen and think about those guys down at the shop next time they're moaning or crying about what they got to buy or what. So,
you already have some Space Marines. Try them out with this. See if you like this game. Because who doesn't have a box of Space Marines in a closet, right?
Yeah, even I've got some Space Marines in a box.
Yep. So for Space Marines, and we've already talked about these a little today too, but I like the Mutatawia for the Space Marines.
Okay. Yeah, lay it on me, man.
There's again, I'm looking at what are their equipment and personnel choices, and they're strictly elite, right? There are no levies in the Mutatawia. Okay. So our bow warriors are our Space Marines with guns. Our standard warriors are our Space Marines without guns. We could do the Hearth Guard for the more stronger melee oriented kind of stuff. We've got some mounted capability with both horse and camel. So you can explore a little bit of different rule set here if you haven't messed around with the camels too much. And then when you go into to the activations, you see a ton of melee stuff. And to me, that just says, that's the old chain sword revving up and running in there. And there's that little bit of I guess we'll call it religious fervor to this board.
I was gonna say
lines
that
up
carries
really well with the Emperor protects and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So, that kind of imagery can kind of carry them through. They can kind of see how that theme carries back to historical times, and happily sacrifice their Space Marine brothers to achieve the mission and stuff like that. So I can totally see how that aligns.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff on this board that I think parallels really well with Space Marines, or even, I mean, gosh, maybe your group is really into something like Dune. You can say, well, these are the Fremen or something.
Fremen, yeah.
So you gotta
Sardaukar,
think about some of these parallels, and I think it becomes really easy to pull out some of these alternate models and try them out. And if you get stuck on like, well, the Hearthguard, don't say that they can use bows. Well, give them bows. Try it out. It's probably not going to break the game.
There's assault troops versus the kind of the regular guys, whatever. I think another good one would be the Militus Christi again, because there's no levies. Hearthguard. So if you're doing like a Space Marine on Space Marine thing, you can say the Ultramarines are the stodgy Militus Christi board, high armor, kind of staying alive versus the Blood Angels are more.
Right. Blood Angels would be good for Ordenstadt. Speaking of,
that's another one there. So, and again, too, you can kind of the Militus Christi, the Knights Templar, those kind of themes resonate more 100%. With kind of casual players as well. I think so. It'd be easier to draw those parallels, and they play with the Space Marines, and they're like, oh, okay. Well, I like I think Knights are cool. Get some. So yeah. All right. Cool.
Yep. So that's what I'm going to recommend for trying out Space Marines with your friends, and then I think we're doing Tyranids next. We had
Tyranids here.
Talked about that. Good old Tyranids. This was one of the first things that I picked up from a modeling perspective. I've got a bunch of old Tyranids in a box, and so again, I primarily started with the troop choices. What equipment can they take, and what kind of guys can they take? And the thing that jumped out to me was actually the Indians from Age of Alexander. And the reason for that is because we have some really interesting equipment options that are not available to any other faction. Right. So we got the chariots, we've got the Raja on the elephant. Maybe that's a big old Carnifex or something like that. We got the elephant itself. So that's that's
tyrant and the
any of those big old bugs. And then for our standard gaunts, we've got the levies without equipment, and then the bow levies. So that could be the termagants and the hormagaunts. And when you look at the abilities, they're all really interesting. The Indians are just an interesting board, right? And something that I forget if the board has been adjusted or if it's just the chariot rules got adjusted. So I know that the
board got a couple updates.
Yeah.
Some kind, I can't remember exactly the nature of it, but a couple of the abilities were adjusted.
Yeah. But there's an ability that helps out the elephants specifically. There's shooting, there's melee. There's a something that allows you to increase the range of your bows and composite bows. Yeah. That's a cool thing. You can get some rerolls. That's a little bit different. Most boards don't have access to on-demand rerolls like that. So that's pretty cool. So anyway, just a really interesting board, huge diversity of equipment and personnel options. And because there's not a lot of Indian models, not a board that I see played very often. So I think that would definitely be my pick for Tyranid.
Sounds cool to me. Yeah, I like the idea. You got the biggest ones represented by elephants. You've got kind of the medium ones represented by the heavy chariot or the light chariot, depending if it's an aggressive or a kind of a shooting type thing. And then you got the kind of the infantry represented by, just the infantry or the cavalry figures. And then, the board does. The good thing is the board does support the elephants and the smashing. So
Right.
anybody like, hey, let's use the monster kind of mash I'm
Right.
sure at some point that is a list that people use, you know, two or
sure.
three of the really big things, and maybe the book invalidated it, but in the game of Saga, taking a few of those big guys, and the Indian board works really well. I don't think every board that can take elephants supports them the best, but this one, you definitely they're going to have fun doubling their auto hits and you know, just really pushing those pieces around. So I think that is a great choice. So yeah, a lot of fun to be had there. And
Absolutely.
we're not going to hit every 40K faction, but we'll do one more. Yeah, we got to keep this under 3 hours.
That's right. Well, one thing I'll say too is, you know, we're talking about the sort of the elite stuff with the Space Marines. That's Chaos Space Marines too.
Sure.
That's any of the guys from any of the factions that you want to feel a little bit elite. I think you could also use the Indians for some of the factions in 40K that have that mixed army feeling to them. So maybe the Imperial Guard would be a good choice there. Again, just like because we've got the bow levies to be your standard guardsmen, you know. So I think I think an elite army and then a mixed arms army covers a lot of factions in 40K. But what makes our next faction unique is their ability to resurrect, and that is, of course, the Necrons, and we're talking about the Persians.
Oh yeah, baby.
So the Persians,
and they shoot too. Good, yeah.
Yeah, they shoot. They shoot all right. We were talking about that earlier. They've got the
and again, a wide variety of troop types.
Wide variety.
So we keep coming back to that. You're choosing boards. Yes. We're not, you know, kind of pulling things out of our butt. We're just kind of just relying on the boards. So we're not making changes necessarily. So
yeah, cool. So this is something that has been fact at least once, but that unnumbered hordes.
It changed a little bit.
Yeah, but you know, really represents the Necron ability to repair themselves, and you know, you end up killing most units twice before they're finally dead. I remember one time I was playing against Persians, and I got a unit down to one dude.
That's the worst.
Yeah. So I think even when I was playing it at the time, I thought to myself that felt like a Necron play. You know? So yeah, but there are some cool options in here, and again, we've got some mounted stuff. So if you want to represent some of the faster Necrons that are, you know, I know some of them are kind of the floating guys, or maybe you want to represent like the blade ones or something like that. You do have that mounted option, but then you've got the shooting combined formation to represent all the different Necrons that have the gun types, and the fact that they're, you know, combined formation, as we were talking about earlier, is also kind of a mixed force option that represents both melee and shooting together in one unit. So I think that makes a pretty strong case for using Persians, not just for Necrons, but we had also talked about, I think, in the previous video about the White Walkers from Game of Thrones. That would probably be one of my picks for that. Either that or the Undead Battle Board for Magic.
Yeah. That's kind of the default there, but I like that the Persians. Resurrection's been sneaking into various war bands and the historical side. So cool. Yeah, I like. Again, there's tons of options too. You know, they've got the Scythe Chariot. Could be. I'm assuming there's kind of a medium size Necron thing that likes to smash things, maybe. Or it could represent a unit or something where he just goes in. It's all melee and dies horribly or something like that. So cool. That is could be it. I don't know, just off the top of your head, do you have any quick suggestions for any just kind of like a one hit like Eldar or Tau or anything kicking around in the back of your mind?
You'd want to concentrate on I think you want to concentrate on shooting for those, any of the any of the boards that prioritize shooting, they give you some shooting examples. I think the Mongols would be perfect for Eldar with their hit and run tactics. The Strathclyde Welsh, the all mounted Welsh board would be great for Eldar because they've got the they've got the move up, shoot, move back feeling that's just that's how Eldar armies tend to play. For Tau,
but fast.
For Tau you want overwhelming shooting. So any of the boards that
the Irish.
Oh yeah, the Irish would be perfect for it because they use the terrain too.
Anything shootier than
No, that would any of. In fact, speaking of the Irish, a little bit like the Iberians, any of the sort of insurgent type factions, the Irish fit really well for that, both thematically and mechanically. But I think they work really well for the Tau in terms of just tons of shooting and but some melee, right? Like if you were even going back to the Rebels and Star Wars, so for the Irish, you've got the shooting ability there that you would want. But then you've got the companions. Maybe that's
heroes.
Maybe that's Luke, Han, and Leia or something like that.
Yeah,
so
Chewie,
I think the Irish board has a lot of potential for interesting narrative choices. So kind of to sum up, we're pretty spoiled with Saga in the diversity of factions that we have.
We've got quite a few.
We've got so many battle boards at this point. We haven't even really scratched the surface too much of chivalry in this video. But like if you really dive into some of the chivalry stuff, you can find some really cool parallels there. So I think kind of the whole concept behind these two videos we've done now is exactly what you said, meeting players where they are and saying, hey, you've got those models and I know you like them, but I know you don't like the rules as much because you're complaining about them right now to me. So here's another set of books that I really enjoy that I think you might enjoy too. Let's try it out. And who knows, maybe you've got a little bit of a conversion opportunity there. So I think that's what this whole thought experiment has all been about.
Yeah, man. I think I just calculated in my head. I think there's 61 battle boards.
Yeah.
Currently, there's going to be another 6 to 8 to 14 coming out this year, depending on everything. So, there's got to be something in there is going to align with whatever you want to do, as
Definitely.
long as your group is aligned. It's great for kind of demo purposes, crossing the bridge, and if this guy is happy to use 40K models to play Saga, but doesn't want to play Saga, and you are fine, you kind of pushing 40K stuff, using the Saga battle boards, just go for it. So awesome. Well, thank you, James, for coming on and kind of, this ideas like this, I can't think of, I'm too entrenched in the Saga logistics to kind of think outside the box in some aspects. So this is definitely one of the ways. I really appreciate you suggesting this topic and kind of going through and laying it all out there. So we've got over 3 hours between this video and the prior, kind of describing our thought process, and you kind of go at it one way. You could see my method was kind of a little different, but if you got a good group, you can make Saga work for anything. So well, we are not going to see the end of you. You're going to come back on probably later in the year. We've got a big list of topics that will work. So we're just scratching the surface.
Absolutely. I really enjoy things like sort of theory crafting and thought experiments and thinking about rules and systems and parallels and all of that stuff. So happy to come back and chat some more.
Awesome. Well, before we go, I want to thank Sean, Patrick, Brick, DJ, Cruz, Damian, Robin, Mitch Scott, and the rest of the Saga Thursday patrons. Wouldn't be doing a video every week in 2026 without the support of the Patreon crew. So I really appreciate it, guys. And definitely comment below if anything we said kind of got some thoughts stewing. I would love to hear it. If anybody actually has used Saga rules for for other game systems, not just limited to Star Wars 40K or the Conquistadors, as we've kind of outlined in this video, and Black Powder as well. But yeah, if you just use Saga for anything, I'd be curious to see how it went and what challenges there would be. But yeah, great topic here. Got the thoughts flowing. I know there are definitely guys at my hobby shop who they're trench crusaders, James. They're 40Kers. They're so I'm trying to think how I can kind of reach those guys. I did a Saga League. They weren't interested, so I'm gonna have to.
Sure.
If I want to try to recruit them somehow, I'm gonna have to take another step in their direction. So this has kind of given me some thoughts on that.
Good.
So, yeah, really appreciate it. But that's gonna be it for this one, James. Thanks again, and we'll catch you folks later.
Bye-bye.
Saga. If you'd like to see more Saga content, consider joining the Heathen Army over on Patreon or popping on down to the Saga Thursday Discord server. Links below. Thanks, guys.